These new Gypsy Rose Blanchard prison calls that have just been released are disgusting. If you listen to these calls and can't see what a monster Gypsy Rose Blanchard is, then there's a problem. The things she says in these calls is just disgusting. That's the best word I could think of. Disgusting, foul, terrible, horrible, horrifying, all of that. So the call I want to talk about today is, it was a call between Gypsy Rose Blanchard and Michelle Dean. Michelle Dean was the woman who was writing the article for BuzzFeed. Now this call took place on August 1st, 2016. Gypsy starts out this call telling this lady how when she gets all these things she wants to do when she gets out of prison, none of which she has done. She talks about she wants to get a job, she wants to help people, she wants to learn to be a good, honest person. She definitely has not learned that yet. But, don't let her tell it. She learned it from her mother, according to her. Just like when she went before the parole board, she was going to be an advocate for prison reform and this and that. And she's done absolutely none of it. Lies. It was all lies. And she tells this Michelle that she even wants to write a book. And we've seen the disgusting book, My Time to Lie. It's My Time to Stand, but basically it was full of lies. My Time to Lie is what she should have named the book. And it was basically a soft porn book. It was the things she put in it, and then to dedicate that book to her daughter. So-called daughter. We'll get into that in another video, because I have even more proof that she does not have a child. Anyways, this lady, Michelle, asks Gypsy, when did she realize that her life was, kind of different, wasn't what everybody else's was? Okay? Gypsy says she was never allowed to have Facebook, according to her. And so at the age of 19, she had a secret Facebook account. And she starts talking to Dan Glidewell, who is like just about double her age, okay? And she wants to be with him. She's attracted to him. She likes him. So that's when she decided all of a sudden that her life was different. Funny. When a man comes into the picture, that's when she decides things aren't what she wants them to be. So it's more reasoning that she did not get rid of her mother because she felt she was being harmed by her. It was all about men. Gypsy wanted, from about 18, when she first started talking to Dan Glidewell, that's when she just wanted to go out and run with these men. She wanted to be wild. She wanted, she's hypersexual. That's a characteristic of her chromosome deletion, 1q21.1. That is a side effect of that chromosome deletion, hypersexuality. So that's when she decides things are different. Everything was fine until she met a man that she wanted to go run around with. And Dee Dee, being a mother, what mother is not going to try to protect their daughter, especially their not very healthy daughter? Who's not going to try to protect them from a man that's double their age? And you're hearing about, he could be a predator, and as long as she was living in that house, she would have to follow Dee Dee's rules. But no, Gypsy never wanted to live by any rules. She wanted to do what she wanted to do when she wanted to do it. And that's partially Dee Dee's fault, because Dee Dee gave in to every little whim Gypsy ever had. Gypsy was incredibly spoiled. And then Michelle asks her about, when this whole plan kind of started, to get rid of her mom. And she reiterates this we've heard her say this before. One time she had said to Nicholas Goldjohn had told her, I'd protect you from anybody. She says, anybody? He says, yes. She says, even my mother? And he says, yes. And she says that's when she pretty much decided and they started formulating this plan. Another lie. Gypsy doesn't tell this Michelle that she had tried to get rid of her mother previously. Gypsy unloaded a BB or a pellet, pew-pew, we'd watch what we say here so we don't get restricted, into her mother, Dee Dee. Dee Dee had to go to the hospital to have these pellets or BBs removed. And she made up a story that, of course, this happened, they were robbed. And it makes you wonder, would Dee Dee still be here if she would have turned Gypsy in then, when Gypsy tried to take her out? And we've heard both sides of the story here with Gypsy. One time she'll tell it she didn't know it was a BB gun. Oh, I'm sorry, BB, pew-pew. And the other time she said she did know. But she tried to harm her mother way before, a couple years before she ever started talking to Nicholas Godejohn about this. More lies. See what I say? Everything is a lie. And this woman's buying it all because, apparently she didn't do her research very well either. Then she goes on talking about how Rod and Christy, her dad and her stepmom, they've been there for her 100% since this happened. Well, where were they before this happened? That's my question. They seen dollar signs. They were telling Gypsy to sign her life rights over to them so they could collect this money from any interviews, movies, book deals, whatever. Because Gypsy could not collect this money, Son of Sam laws. And there's evidence. There's one time in particular, off the top of my head, Dee Dee had sent a message to Rod. She thought Dee Dee or Gypsy was going to go on vacation with Rod. And then all of a sudden, the last minute, Rod pulls out of it. Well, it would have just been too much, with Gypsy having the wheelchair and yada, yada, yada. Rod never wanted to be a part of Gypsy's life until this happened and they seen they could make some money off of her. Dee Dee kept trying to facilitate a relationship between Gypsy and Rod, but Rod really didn't want no part of it. He just wanted to be with his new wife and his children with his wife. So that's my question. If they're such great people, like Gypsy's telling this Michelle, they're wonderful people. They're great people. Where were they before this happened? If this happened to where Dee Dee, was telling Gypsy she was the same age for years, and supposedly she told Rod on Gypsy's 18th birthday, Rod calls to tell her happy 18th birthday, and supposedly Dee Dee tells him, don't tell her she's 18, she doesn't know. When they found things like this were happening, why didn't Rod call somebody to look into this? Because he didn't care. He's not this wonderful person that Gypsy's talking about to this Michelle. Then Gypsy says, she believes that Dee Dee would have been the perfect mom for someone that was sick. But Gypsy says, but I'm not sick. I never was. Yes, she was. She doesn't. At this point, she already knows she has the microdeletion 1q21.1. But she sure doesn't tell Michelle that. She doesn't tell her that, muscle weakness, digestion issues. She doesn't tell her that these were all side effects to the microdeletion. So Dee Dee would have been a great mother for someone that was sick, but Gypsy wasn't sick. Yes, she was. She had failure to thrive. She had microcephaly. She had the strabismus. And most importantly, what I keep preaching is she had the chromosome deletion, and that's why she had these illnesses. So she was not a healthy child. So that wraps up about that call. Then, because at that point, that's when Gypsy, the phone cuts off. She has to add more money onto the phone, and she's going to call Michelle back on the next day, the 2nd of August, 2016. So I'll probably tell you about that call tomorrow. So let me know about what you think about these lies that I've uncovered in this phone call. Let me know your thoughts on it, on the monster that is Gypsy Rose Manson.